Hello, Justice Warriors. Good afternoon. How are you today? It's Wednesday. It is January 8th. It's 2 o'clock on the nose. And let's get started with our live. I'll start by guzzling my coffee, finishing that process. And then while I'm doing that, I'll ask you to please hit your like button if you don't mind. And you can make sure you're still subscribed if you would like, or if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. It helps the channel grow. And share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like my channel. Sherry, what's up? You are here first. Thank you. That's awesome. You are so awesome. I appreciate you. How are you today? Turn on your notification bell to ring like you probably did, right? So what's going on? How you feeling? How you doing? Oh, man. I got to tell you, just straight off the bat, after I do my disclaimer, everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something. All my videos are made for YouTube. It's an entertainment platform, and I aim to be educational, learn and grow. And I appreciate my viewers so much. Okay, I'm getting my tire fixed, 32 degrees. Well, you're warm compared to us. I mean, seriously, 32 is 1 degree below freezing. It's not that bad when, 22 is kind of bad. Not as bad as like 7, which I think is coming in within the week. The 20s are rough. 30s are kind of fun because you have snow, but it's not miserable and life-threatening. I mean, it is if you're not dressed appropriately. But the 20s is life-threatening sometimes, even if you are dressed appropriately, if you're not dressed appropriately enough. Was 15 overnight? Yeah, I'm sure it was here too. I didn't even check. Do you want to remind me, are you in Oklahoma? Am I getting that right? And let's see. So yesterday, my video, like I felt so out of it when I was on Oklahoma. Cool. Where Silkwood happened. The plutonium plant. Karen Silkwood, 1973. Okay. So, and here, let me show you guys, or show you, Sherry, my adorable van. Her name is Daisy. You can see why her name is Daisy from her two-toneness of the bright yellow and white and that split window. And there's my adorable husband doing his best Christian Slater impression in a tux. That was our wedding day, right after the wedding. So we loaded into the van. One of our groomsmen drove us off into the sunset, and the rest was history. I can't believe we're still together. That was 1992. We've been together since 1990. It's quite a while. Quite a while. It's pretty amazing. So 4 kids later, and I don't know. I don't know how we do it, push and pull, right? I mean, we fight a lot. People used to always say to us, like, oh, you guys get along so well, you probably don't fight at all. And we would just laugh. We'd be like, we fight over everything all the time, which is probably why we get along so well, is we get it out of our system. But man, it drives me crazy. It does. It's like, I don't need the animosity. But I also don't want him to like be a doormat and just go my way. And I'm certainly not going to be anybody's doormat and just go his way. So that's good that we see things our own way. Although I am always right. Aren't you, Sherry? Are you married? Are you single? If you want to share. And if you don't, that's cool too. No problem. So you didn't hit the like button yet, girl. No like. So yeah, yesterday I was feeling really loopy while I was trying to talk about this stuff. And then when I was watching the live to do my quality control and see if I said things all messed up and backwards, and fact check myself, because I do like to fact check myself while I'm live, but I also like to double and triple fact check myself and cross reference and stuff, because you know how it is. So, um, man, I got the 82nd Brigade wrong yesterday. I said 84th Brigade, but it is Fort Bragg, which is now Fort Liberty. So, Matt Livelsberger, the guy that drove the white pickup truck, Mr. Jabbar in um, New Orleans, and Brent Kopacka and Brett Payne were all at some point in time stationed in Fort Bragg in the 82nd Airborne Division Brigade. Well, no, I guess it's like 1st Brigade, 82nd Airborne Division. I'm sorry. I try to be as accurate as I can. And I just thought that was fascinating, because when I thought of it during my live yesterday, I wasn't sure if I was on point or not. So there's a lot of people asking what's going on in Fort Bragg, or I guess it's called Fort Liberty now. Um, and if they're doing kind of a Jacob's Ladder kind of thing, like an MK Ultra kind of thing, Project Artichoke, whatever you want to call it. So I checked out some of this Sean Ryan show. Okay. Let me give you guys my opinion. Sean Ryan is the guy who said that he got an email from Matthew Livelsberger a couple of days, or no, he didn't get the email. A guest on his show got the email. I think they're both full of crap. You know me, I'm skeptical of everybody. I think everybody's full of crap. So Sean Ryan has, I think, somewhere around 4 or 5 million subs. That doesn't mean very much to me. In fact, it can mean the opposite of good, in my opinion. I mean, not that I'm jealous or anything. I have no desire to be corporate and to have producers and to have other people doing my hair and makeup and, messing with my set, messing with my lighting. Although he does have good lighting, Sean Ryan, I'll give him that. But the first time I heard of his show was on Christina Randall a few days ago, when she was talking about this Matthew Livelsberger. And I want to get into some of the conspiracy theory that is part of that email, and I think part of what they're peddling over there, in my opinion. I think it's absolute crap. And then the Sarah Adams that specifically Christina Randall was talking about, as soon as I tried to watch that, I couldn't watch it because she seemed so freakish. And I'm sorry if that sounds mean. I don't know that I can check again and not be so judgmental. Sarah Adams is the one that is like ex-CIA or something. And, she's like outing the CIA about everything. And I don't know, if you're ex-CIA, you don't do that. That's, even though you're not CIA anymore, like that will get you rubbed out, I think, or you just don't do it. It's unprofessional. It's just like you don't talk smack about your previous employers, right? But that's what they're saying that Matthew Livelsberger was doing and is doing. I think they're saying, and again, I haven't been able to force myself to look at it deeply enough, but I would imagine that some of you have. Today's your anniversary. Lost him in 2007. He made me a widow at 50. I am so sorry, my dear. Oh, I could just cry. So, January 8th is your anniversary. So you had a white wedding like Billy Idol. And you were 50. That's so young. I'm in my 50s. Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope that you at least had good life insurance, or he had good life insurance. That is terrible. That's like the most stressful thing a person can go through. I've studied a lot of stress, post-traumatic stress disorder in my mental health counseling career. And losing your spouse is the top ranked stress if you can give it like a numerical value, it's absolutely the highest. So I'm really sorry. And you can probably, um, you're probably a testament to that, right? Had some, not a lot, but it helped. Yeah, every bit helps. I mean, funerals are freaking expensive. So, what I want to say about the Sean Ryan show, the Sarah Adams, and then his guest, whose name I should have written down, the guy who says that he got the email. Did I write it down? I don't think I did, but that's okay because I don't really want to like badmouth him, but at the same time, you know, they have done some vetting to say that yes, the email came from his device, but that doesn't mean that much in this day and age. And the whole thing with this Matthew Livelsberger situation is all about artificial intelligence and how it's changing everything, and just how basically hosed we all are because you don't know which way is up. And now we have Facebook saying that they're not going to fact check and that they're going to be like X and that they've got no backbone. I mean, not that Zuckerberg ever did. Gross. But it's bizarre. And I still think the whole thing is orchestrated, choreographed, street theater. I really do. You know, even the still shots that they say are Matthew Livelsberger, if I'm saying his name right, I apologize if I'm not. The still shots that they say are him in the Cybertruck in front of Trump Tower right before the Cybertruck explodes. Oh, and now they're saying that his gun like simultaneously fired with the explosion. Maybe his gunshot was what set off the explosion, which I could believe for sure. Um, but those still shots, those images can totally be artificial intelligence. So I think the deep state theory, and I get so confused, like when you're talking about deep state, are you talking about radical left, radical right? I mean, when you go so far left or you go so far right, they meet up right in, you know, the intersection of crazy and madman gone mad insane. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. Madman gone mad insane, crazy. Those two streets intersect, and that's where I think the extreme left wing and the extreme right wing, like, it's just nuts. And I don't honestly know which one they call the deep state. I think it's usually the right wing calling the crazy left wingers the deep state. But to me, it's all just such mudslinging, and it's like, you know, what are we doing here? We're trying to get to truth. We're not trying to focus on the idiots. We're trying to like move away from that and focus on smart people doing smart things, hopefully, because there's a lot of them. There's absolutely a lot of them. And of course, a lot of them are not involved in politics. Of course, a lot of them are not involved in YouTube. But we do have a lot of smart people involved in both of those things. So I do think that there's some hope. And we do have a lot of people that are not corrupt or not corruptible. So, you know, my spouse is law enforcement and he's pretty much not corruptible, which is honorable, but it is also a monkey wrench in that field, in my humble conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly. So, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that the deep state is saying that Matthew Livelsberger faked his own death because he's a whistleblower and they're after him. And so he's trying to protect himself. That's what the deep state is thinking, saying, doing. I don't know. I really think that it could be an MK Ultra type of brainwashing gone sideways. Of course, it could just be a mental health crisis. Absolutely. There is that possibility. But I think it's more likely that it's like a MK Ultra gone sideways kind of thing. I also think that it was like an advertisement in a way for Tesla, and that the person who invented that Cybertruck and his partner in crime orchestrated it to be dramatic and attention seeking, and that they thought it would make them look really good. Let me tell you a story that might seem like it doesn't have anything to do with it, but it does, okay? There was once a police chief who was getting, he was having a lot of challenge with, like a lot of police chiefs were across the country, but this one in particular, he was having a lot of challenge with the Black Lives Matter demonstrations that were happening back in 2020. And the people that were organizing those peaceful protests across the country were requesting police to not be involved and to keep it peaceful. And this police chief in particular had a problem with it. He didn't like it. He didn't know what to do. I'm sure that was a lot of them, but I'm sure some of them were fine with it. I don't know. I only know what I know. I don't try to pretend to know things that I don't know. So he was trying to make himself look really good. And he tape recorded himself calling a wizard from the KKK, who he alleged left him a voicemail. He also played the voicemail for everybody, that said that the wizard and his white supremacy crew were going to come. And I don't know if they were threatening violence or if they were just threatening to show up at the next big Black Lives Matter event, which was pretty much every weekend. And so this police chief, in his ingenuity, not only called the KKK wizard, or alleged the guy who was claiming to be a KKK wizard, but he also tape recorded it. And, he's been really chummy with the guy. And he was like, hey, yeah, man, I was just calling to let you know that, because you called to threaten us, we're canceling the event. So you guys don't need to come. It's not even going to happen. So, have a nice day. And he tape records this, and then he brings it to a city council meeting and plays it to try to get applause, to try to get attention, to try to show everyone, like, look how great I am, look what I did. And people were just like, first of all, you don't cancel something because of that. Second of all, you don't tell the people that are threatening you that their threats are effective and that you're just going to be spineless and crawl into a corner and hide. And third of all, you sounded like you knew this guy, and it sounded like it was scripted. Like you guys were both kind of speaking before the other one was done. Like you were reading off the same script. So it really backfired in his face, and everybody thought that he was friends with the guy and that he made the whole thing up. So this performance that he did to try to make himself look like Mr. Wonderful did quite the opposite. It made him look like a complete piece of crap, and everybody hated him for it. And people were really questioning, like, why would you tape record it? First of all, why would you make this conversation? Why would you have this discussion? Why would you take those actions? Why would you tape record it? And then why would you share that? Like, if you're going to just keep that for your files, like that might make sense in case something happens down the road. But the whole thing was so suspicious and so staged. And that's what I'm thinking with the Trump hotel in Vegas and the Cybertruck burning in front of it. It's so perfectly staged. And allegedly in all these communications, after my live yesterday, it was almost like the authorities were paying attention to my live, although I know they weren't. They were probably paying attention to other people who were thinking along the same lines. And and laughing about these manifestos that are like, notes in somebody's phone, maybe a paragraph or a page, and maybe 250 words, which would be, I don't know, a paragraph. I think a page is like 500 words usually, but manifestos are like thousands and thousands and thousands of words, right? Lots of words, lots of pages, lots of crazy, lots of insanity boiled down. So they decided yesterday to come out with some new facts in their investigation. And they said that they've now found a 6-page manifesto. So they're still calling it a manifesto. That's still like, a sticky note size manifesto, in my humble opinion. But I thought it was hilarious and suspicious. I'm really suspicious of the law enforcement that's investigating the situation, the crime, the tragedy, the fire, the explosion, because why keep making announcements? Why not keep your cards close to your chest, do your investigation, and then come out with your results in the end? Like, you don't need to update the public at every twist and turn. And I doubt that they will update the public at every twist and turn, but there's just a lot to be suspicious of. A lot. So they said that in some of the information that they discovered, that he was maybe initially planning on going from Colorado Springs to the Grand Canyon, to like the last floor lookout place of the Grand Canyon. And then he had a change of plans, and maybe he was headed towards Mexico, right? The 51st state. Sorry, I couldn't resist. um, but it really makes me wonder if perhaps this Matthew Livelsberger is a victim and was set up, and that maybe he was stopping his Cybertruck at the valet area to go stay a night or more than one night to check in at the Trump Hotel there in Vegas. Like, who's to say that he wasn't? And then this whole thing unfolded. I also find it extremely suspicious, and I want to give Christina Randall credit for this because that's where I saw it. I've seen it other places since, but she was the first one that spoke about it. Well, I think she just spoke about his ID being just slightly burned when, there was this explosion inside the truck where they said initially that he was burned beyond recognition, but that his wallet, what was inside of it, wasn't burned that bad. And one of the things that was inside of it was a photograph of him without his shirt on, so you could see all of his tattoos. And I mentioned it yesterday. I started to mention how it reminded me of Brian Laundrie with his dry sack and his Moab Coffee Roasters hat, and not his ID, not his passport, but photographs of himself and Gabby Petito, and things in his dry sack so that you would know for sure it was him. But he definitely took his ID with him because he needed it wherever he was going. But this guy with his photograph of the tattoos, if he was burned beyond recognition, then how could they match the tattoos? Plus, we know this from other cases. Tattoos are not an identifying factor in fatalities. Tattoos are an identifying factor in like hunting fugitives and such. But once a body is deceased, they change color and they change locations. So, for instance, like in the Kylie Rodney case, her tattoo of 17 that was on her ribs initially might have been down on her hip during the autopsy. And the colors of the tattoo get a lot brighter. I know that from, real life. I mean, not that I've seen it with my bare eyes, thank goodness, but I do know that that's a fact, that the colors of the tattoos get a lot brighter and they just look different in general. So if they're saying that his body was burned beyond recognition, but yet they use the tattoos to match to the photograph to say, yeah, we know it's him. It's so much effery, you guys. It's so much effery. So the overlapping in the deployment of these two guys that had their pickup trucks, the Cyber truck and the F1 Ford 50 white pickup truck in New Orleans, that both rented from, was it called Turo? The app to do like a renting a car from somebody in your community, basically. So they both overlapped in their Afghanistan deployment. I got the dates of that written down. Matthew Livelsberger was deployed in Afghanistan from April in 2008 until November of 2008. And then this is the one that overlaps with the other guy. May of 2009 to December of 2009. He was deployed to Afghanistan 5 times. So that was the first two. So Mr. Jabbar, or Jabbar, however you say his name, he was in Afghanistan, deployed to Afghanistan from February of 2009 until January of 2010. So that means that the entire time that Matt Livelsberger was there on his second deployment from May of 2009 to December 2009, that entire 7 months, they were overlapping. I'm not saying that they knew each other, but they both were serving in the Army. They both started their service in the Army around the same time. I think there was about a 5-year age difference. One sec. And they both served in the 82nd Airborne Division in Fort Bragg. I was going to go over the dates of that too. It's a lot of crazy. One sec. So the other times that Matthew Livelsberger served in Afghanistan, June of 2010 until September of 2010, and then September of 2017 until April of 2018, and then his last tour of duty would have been February of 2019 until September of 2019. So, yeah, too many dates. I'm going to confuse you guys as well as myself, right? Sorry about that. What did I want to say about that? There's so much. My brain just goes in so many different directions. And there was something that I really wanted to share about. Maybe it'll come back to me about that. About the two guys and their trucks and other things that they had in common. Oh, I know what it was. Oh, I'm so glad I remembered. Before I forget, let me say it because I tried to say it yesterday, but I forgot. The Mandalay. Remember the Mandalay Hotel in Vegas that was, where they had that country music live shooter travesty that Maui Police Department Police Chief Pelletier was in charge of that investigation, the Mandalay Hotel, Mandalay Resort, Mandalay Casino, whatever it is. Matthew Livelsberger lives on, thought I wrote it down. Mandeville Street address. When the first day that they were talking in their press conference about Matt Livelsberger, and they kept saying again and again his Mandeville Street address, the law officer speaking almost said Mandalay several times. I don't think my brain would have gone there. But then with the explosions that happened in Hawaii on New Year's, I'm just like, that's so weird. Why does he keep wanting to say Mandalay? Kind of like Sam Brown with the covering up. We're not covering up the cover up. Yeah, we didn't cover up. I'm not trying to say cover up. No, there was no cover up. It was kind of like that. He said it like 5 times in a very short space of time. Mandeville Street address. And he kept saying Mandalay. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it does mean something. But it really got my brain going. So, yeah. You know, these official updates on the attacks are part of why they're doing them, I think, is because they see what's going on YouTube and on social media, and that people are coming up with these conspiracy theories and they're trying to control the narrative. But they should know better. It's beyond control, right? I mean, you can't control social media. You can't control what people say and think unless you're Elon Musk or you're Zuckerberg or you own your own social media like Truth Social. And then you can. So that's what they're doing, in my opinion. I also think that the right, the people that are politically on the, the conservative, the Republican side, that they're really trying to get this executive order for martial law. Don't you think? Sherry says, had some, not a lot, but it helped. Yes, I agree. You still here? Oh, we have 6 people in the house. If the rest that are here that haven't hit the like button yet are able to, that would be awesome. Just helps the algorithm send it out to more people. So, yeah, I'm really glad that I wrote that down, Mandeville, because I thought that I wrote it down and it was in another notebook, not the one that I had with me yesterday when I was presenting to you guys. So, yeah. These operations are just so weird, are they not? I mean, we get hoodwinked, we get gobsmacked, we get gaslit. It's hard enough when people aren't intentionally trying to do that. It's absolutely hard enough. So this Livelsberger was part of this unacknowledged special access program, USAP. And I don't know if that's the thing that he was allegedly being a whistleblower for, but I tend to think that this is a whole conspiracy theory that's been cooked up on the internet. And it sounds like it was cooked up by that Ryan, what's the name of his channel? Sean Ryan show with his guest with the email. And they were like, acting like they were all scared, like, oh, we can't do this. And acting like, well, they had to do it because mainstream media won't do it and somebody's got to do it. And I don't know, they remind me of the guy at the insurrection with the horns, the vegan guy, the barista whose mommy was taking care of him. I think he still lived with his mom. The guy who had all the makeup on, and isn't he the one who took a dump on Nancy Pelosi's desk? These people, man, they're just like wild animals. Absolutely. But now they can all be pardoned, and I'm concerned that like Puffy's going to get pardoned. Brother Love. I mean, Weinstein got schlonged. Tenacious D said so. He's probably going to pardon him too. It's pretty frightening. It's a lot of misogyny. A lot of misogyny. And then it doesn't help when the women that flock around Tenacious D are just willing to kiss the ring and basically say and do whatever he says. He says jump. They all say how high, what time. I'm blown away at the amount of drama that he's trying to concoct before he's even inaugurated. He's going to freak out tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 9th. Tomorrow's Jimmy Carter's funeral. Tenacious D is going to freak out that Jimmy Carter is stealing his thunder yet again. He can't just like take a seat, chill out, cool his jets, and allow other people to have their own thing. There's going to be a lot of drama tomorrow. I have a feeling, at least a lot of crazy posts, but I would imagine that he'll stir up some street theater. I would imagine. I hope not. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's so absurd. And, the Washington, D.C. city officials, the law enforcement, the military, they're all prepared for anything all the time. So, they were able to keep the peace J6 4 years ago because they were prepared. I think that it went as far as it did because there were some of those officials, those authorities that were in on it. Honestly, they wanted it to happen. And it's just amazing that more people weren't hurt. It's amazing to me to hear Tenacious D talk about Ashley Babbitt being some innocent victim. If you saw the videotape footage of her lunging to that window or door, glass door, I think it was, as she was like attacking it, and the whole group that she was in had been told numerous times by the law enforcement officer on the other side not to do it, that they would get shot. And there were multiple warnings. And, it was crazy. She got shot in the neck and died instantly. But she was not an innocent victim. I mean, those people were wreaking havoc on the Capitol. I mean, taking a shit on somebody's desk. Somebody did that when I was at college at Evergreen State College. There was a student who had gotten kicked out of school who broke into the president's office and did that exact same thing. And that guy was just disgusting. Like show some class. This is so disgusting. What else that reminds me of? That reminds me of the movie Alpha Dog. If you guys haven't seen Alpha Dog with Justin Timberlake, that's a really good movie. It's about a kid that got kidnapped by Jesse James Hollywood and his posse in basically a drug deal gone bad. It's based on real life. And it was gangs in Southern California. And then they kidnapped this guy, Nick, the 15-year-old, who was the little brother of one of their gang members, to hold him ransom to get payment. And they drove him around for 3 days, took him to all these parties, and then made him dig his own grave. So why am I telling you about all that? Because At one point, they broke into one of the gang members' houses and took a dump on his uh, floor of his home. And that was super disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. That was also a thing in that movie, The Luckiest Girl Alive, the one that Mila Kunis starred in and produced. So she was violated by some freaks at a party, and those same freaks violated a male at a different event that same way. They took a dump on his chest. They pinned him down and took a dump on his chest. So it's just the most disgusting, humiliating, unsanitary thing imaginable. And to think that that guy, that vegan barista, horned, painted face, I don't know what else to call him. Shaman, right? He was the shaman. I'm glad I remembered. Okay, I forgot he was a shaman. But he's the one who did that on Nancy Pelosi's desk, isn't he? And I'm not a fan of Pelosi by any means. I'm not a fan of most politicians. Um, but I would never do that to anyone, no matter what. I mean, it really just shows how disgusting you are, in my opinion. So why am I going on and on about that? Because I think all this is just crap. I think it's utter crap. All of this drama with the explosions in New Orleans, or the intended explosions in New Orleans, um, the explosion in Vegas, the explosions in Hawaii. I want to tell you why I'm suspicious. Hey, Annabees. I want to tell you why I'm suspicious of the explosions in Hawaii. I've mentioned it a few times. So they happened like right at midnight in a neighborhood in Honolulu, which is on Oahu. You know, it's the biggest city of all of the Hawaii cities and towns. And just a real like working class kind of neighborhood. And I've seen the videotape footage of all of the fireworks going off in that neighborhood right at midnight. And then this huge fire that broke out that the 20 people allegedly passed away in. And it's a huge fire. It really makes me wonder. And I kind of strung it together yesterday, I think, during my live, but then more so afterwards, because I really do feel like I'm the blind leading the blind, trying to figure out all this effery, all this mind effery, um, that these places, Hawaii, Vegas, and New Orleans, are all three huge tourist destinations, especially on New Year's Eve. So it's really an attack on like the economy and tourism. And then especially finding out that Matthew Livelsberger was possibly intending to go to the Grand Canyon. I mean, that's got to be one of the hugest tourist destinations in our country, if not in the world. I'm not sure. I haven't had the good fortune of going there yet. I hope someday that I do. And I can't imagine that it's a big thing on New Year's, but maybe. I mean, it's probably a big thing any day of the year, especially that cool glass floor thing. I mean, it sounds so cool. It also sounds super scary for anybody who's like sensitive about heights, which I think is most of us, because, it's just kind of a natural instinct to not be wanting to look down that far. Um, I can take it like being up in the Space Needle looking down, but I know some people can't. They have to like back way up. And yeah, it just depends on how sturdy, how secure you feel. And, things break, earthquakes happen, railings fall, glass breaks, bridges fall. I used to be scared to death every time I went across this one bridge in Seattle that went over Lake Union. Every single time. I was so scared. I'm still that way. A bridge here in Ohio on Highway 71. or the Freeway 71 between Cincinnati and Columbus. It's closer to Cincinnati. It's kind of near Kings Island, the amusement park. And it's an old bridge and they do a lot of maintenance on it. It seems like it's sturdy, but every time I drive over it, I'm scared to death. And I try not to drive over it. I try to take other routes so that I don't have to. That's how I was with that bridge in Seattle. And then there was an earthquake that injured that bridge and people on it. That also happened in San Francisco. I think the year before we moved there. We moved there for my graduate school in 1994. I want to say it was 1993 where they had that big like 7.0 earthquake, and the Oakland Bay Bridge fell apart and people were crushed and fell into the water, you guys. Like the kind of stuff that's like out of movies. So yeah, a lot of fears are based in reality, which brings me to one of the many points that I started to talk about yesterday and didn't really finish my thought. And I apologize for that, but this is why I review my videos so that I can try to clean it up. So I mentioned a book that I've mentioned many times. I mentioned two of them. I mentioned The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker, which is one of the greatest books of all times. Changed my life probably more than any other book that I've read in my life. Right up there with The Four Agreements. Those two books changed my life probably more than any others. But I think Catcher in the Rye did also. That's an amazing book. And we can talk about that, but that's kind of a different thing. It's more mental health and such. But I love Salinger. Absolutely love Salinger. Just like I love Truman, Capote. These people that really knew how to write. Hemingway. So Gavin de Becker is a really good writer. And it's hard for me to read books that are written by people who are not good writers, which most people, I think, are not good writers. I think it's really hard to be a good writer. I mean, I try, and I always like to proofread my stuff to death, and then I like to get it proofread by somebody else, and I'm not the least bit insulted with any changes that they want to make. I think it's important to edit the crap out of everything. Unlike who is the guy who would just type and type and type, back in the guy Jack Kerouac. So he just did like the free association without punctuation, without capitalization, and he would like get spools of paper like from the newspaper that were uncut, and he'd put them in his typewriter and he would just type for like 24 hours straight. And that was, I think, the way it would get published. I'm not sure. I never really read Kerouac. But I've seen a lot about him. He's a fascinating individual. And he definitely influenced our American culture. But back to Gavin de Becker, another fascinating individual who's really influenced American culture. And he built an entire empire out of that book called The Gift of Fear. And I want to explain the title of it real quick, and I'll read some of your comments too, because I love your comments. The title of the book, The Gift of Fear, it sounds kind of counterintuitive because you think fear isn't a good thing, right? You don't want to be fearful, but your instinct to have fear, like when you're, standing on top of the Empire State Building, that's a good thing to have fear of that because, gravity and heights and, death, right? So the whole book is written to help you harness your instinct, your intuition, your gut, to keep yourself safe. That's what that book is about. So it's looking at fear as a gift because it helps guide you. It helps you make a quick assessment. Another book that I think was a complete plagiarism of it that was also super successful by a completely different author who I think was a dirtbag because he just rewrote the same book and I think he knew that that's what he did. I don't think it was a coincidence or nothing. It's called Blink. And that book is about how in the blink of an eye, you're taking in like 1,000 pieces of information and you're making decisions. And then we call that intuition, which is real fruity, right? It's like, oh, just being intuitive. And no, you don't want to be fruity. You want to be fact based. You want to be, grounded in reality. And intuition is grounded in reality, is what Gavin de Becker is trying to explain to all of us. That intuition is given a feminine attachment, which is neither here nor there. That we all have intuition. We all need to trust our intuition. We all need to cultivate our intuition to keep ourselves safe. So he's a private investigator from Los Angeles who had a very successful career before he wrote the book. And one of the reasons I have so much respect for him, and a lot of people do, is because he's so honest and he's so direct, and he tells you exactly why he's in the field that he's in. He tells you exactly why he knows the things that he knows. And he knows because he was raised in a domestic violence household, and I want to say his mother held his father at gunpoint. I mean, the father was definitely the abuser. One of them was holding the other one at gunpoint, and he was in the room. And I think they held that gun for probably felt like forever, even if it was only 5 minutes. But I think it was like 20 minutes. It was a super long time. And Gavin was like 10 at the time. And of course, he was super scared at first, but then he quickly calmed down because he knew that they weren't going to shoot, that if they were going to shoot, they would have done it already. So that was how he coped with that severely traumatizing situation. And that's why he wants to share how to pay attention to what's going on around you to make good choices. And, it's a good example of had he freaked out and made, tried to make a run for it, that might have scared somebody, and then they might have fired when they weren't actually planning on firing the gun. I had a situation like that just last night with my dogs. My dogs are super friendly with each other, but we gave them a squeaky toy for Christmas. I didn't. Somebody in the family did. And the bigger dog was like really possessive of that squeaky toy. And so if any of the animals came anywhere near her when she had her squeaky toy near her, she would growl at them and act like she was going to hurt them. And so she had her squeaky toy on the bed next to her, next to me. And then my little dog, Mookie, was just trying to get affection from me and her and trying to give affection to her. And Mookie was too close to her with her squeaky toy. And I thought they were going to fight. I thought that they were going to hurt each other, but I didn't do that much. Like physically, I didn't want to grab Mookie or get up and get off the bed. I just tried to use a soothing voice and say, it's okay, calm down, and put my hand on Coco's back, the one that was being really aggressive about it. But then she destroyed the squeaky toy, so we don't have to worry about it anymore. But that's the kind of thing. It's like, when you have dogs that are normally peaceful with each other, and then you have a situation that could become really dangerous, and anybody who knows dogs knows that you don't want to get in the middle of a dog fight. That can be life-threatening for you too. So, but many of us would not be able to resist protecting our animals from each other, right? We'd get right in there and fight for their life as well as our own. So, it was just one of those situations that was really unexpected, and it's good to be able to figure out how to trust your own animal instinct and how to pay attention to all the factors that are around you. There were a couple of cats that were on the bed too. And if anybody made a false move, or let's say that, somebody dropped something loud in the other room or broke something, that could have triggered a violent attack. It also could have like dissipated the tension. You just don't know. So you just got to make the best choice that you can in the moment. And that's why I'm explaining to you what The Gift of Fear is about and why it's titled that, because I really recommend for anybody who hasn't read that book to read it. And he's built an entire empire on that book and other books like it. So I think his second book was like how to make assessments for acts of terrorism. And he was a regular on Oprah Winfrey's show many, many times. For people that are fans of Oprah, I don't know that many of us are anymore after the way she acted with the Maui fires. That was weird AF. And then all this stuff with Puffy. So let's see what you guys are saying. Gotta go in Wally World, where I'll catch up later. Love you. Thanks, Sherry. You're so sweet. I missed that one. Sorry. It's taken me all this time to get back to the comments. I remember that case and that movie. Oh, the Jesse James, the Alpha Dog. So you've seen the movie. It's a really good movie. The case was horrifying. I want to say it was in the 90s. If you, I'll do a quick Google because I couldn't remember Nick's last name. It's like Markovich or something like that. But if you just Google Jesse James Hollywood movie. So it came out in 2006, and let's see. Emile Hirsch is in it, Justin Timberlake, who I already said, Bruce Willis, Sharon Stone, Amanda Seyfried. Anyway, very well done movie. Oh, Olivia Wilde and Amber Heard is in it, you guys. That's hilarious. Should I keep going? See who else? Any other names I recognize? That's a lot of names to recognize. I don't think I'm recognizing any others. No. But so the guy, Nick, that was the victim, that was just really, really sad. And it's funny because the director of it is also named Nick. Nicholas Markowitz in the year 2000. Okay, yeah, I thought it was in the 90s, but year 2000. So I highly recommend that movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. It reminded me a lot of things about that movie that came up for me in relationship to the Kylie Rodney case, because he was hanging out at parties with friends. Like, he actually didn't probably know that he was kidnapped. Like, he knew he was kidnapped at first when they abducted him on the street and threw them into his van. But then when he was just hanging out with these people that were like his brother's frenemies and going to all these parties and partying, he probably didn't realize that he couldn't leave. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but it took many years for them to bust Jesse James Hollywood. And I want to say like maybe 10 years before he was sentenced. And I want to say that there are more people that testified in that trial than any other trial, maybe like somewhere around 160, because there were so many witnesses from all these parties. So it was quite a fiasco, quite an ordeal. That is so disgusting. Yeah, Grand Canyon is so awesome in the real definition of the word. It has an almost supernatural feeling when you are there. It makes you feel like it can pull you in. Yeah, yeah. I would imagine like same thing with Joshua Tree. I've heard amazing stories about both. I have not had the pleasure of going to either. I'd also like to check out Moab and Delicate Arches and all that stuff. I mean, Utah has a lot, a lot, a lot. And Sedona. These are all parts of the country. Like I've visited almost every part of the country that we have, including Canada and Mexico. But I've been to Canada, I've been to Mexico, but I haven't been to any of that cool stuff. I mean, I've been to Palm Springs, I've been through Needles. um I haven't been to any of that cool stuff. I'd really like to check it out. And maybe I have, and I just didn't even know that I was like near Joshua Tree when I was in Palm Springs and hanging out with friends and going out to natural areas where we could like swim in the river, and people were like cliff jumping and stuff. I wouldn't do that. And again, the gift of fear, like that's a good thing to be afraid of. How many stories have you heard of cliff jumpers that it didn't go so well and it wasn't so much fun? um Carmack, I agree with your statement. I can't see Carmack. Who's Carmack? Did they block me? They're in my chat, but I can't see them. Annabes, because you said, hi, Carmack. I agree with your statement. You said that like 15 minutes ago. That's wild. That's wild if somebody's in my chat and I can't see them. Unless maybe they made a comment and then deleted it. But still, it would tell me that the comment was deleted. But yeah, I know there's some weird quirks with YouTube, and I think that that might be one of them. Like somebody can block you and then come into your chat and say things, which is not a good feature. YouTube. That's not a good feature. And I don't know if Carmack is friend or foe, if they accidentally or on purpose blocked me. I mean, sometimes your finger kind of slips when you're trying to do something. And do you have it on all messages or top messages? Thank you. I had put it on all messages and it flipped itself back to top messages. You're the best, Annabes. So now I can see Carmack. Oh my God, that's hilarious. What else did I miss? Carmack says, I think all the violence is a setup for 45 to declare martial law as soon as sworn in my humble opinion. Carmack, I agree with you 100%. Thank you for your comment, and thank you for commenting again that you're still here. And yeah, you probably thought, like, why is she ignoring my comment? Because I totally agree with you 100%. I think I said that earlier, maybe before you were here. I definitely used the term martial law, and that I think that that's where this is headed. And it worries me. It worries me a lot that this type of violence, like the kind of the medieval J6 type of violence, is going to be the new norm. I lived in Seattle during Y2K. I lived like in the kind of the inner city, a little section of it called Ballard, um, that used to be considered like not Seattle, but then it became Seattle. So I lived there when it was just starting to become cool. When I moved to Seattle, I'm like, I'm not moving anywhere except Queen Anne, because Queen Anne's the coolest. But yeah, prices are bad. Ballard had good prices and it was pretty cool too. So my point was that we were living in the city, and everyone across the country, remember, all of us were completely concerned about violence with the computers all turning over to the year 2000, that it might do things like shut down computer systems and shut down water and shut down power, and that it might be like a martial law kind of situation where people were fighting over things like water and toilet paper. And it wouldn't matter if you had those things stocked up if you didn't have a way to protect yourself and to protect your stock, your inventory. So a lot of people were getting pew pews that didn't own pew pews. And this was before my husband was in law enforcement. This was when he worked for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And he was trying to become an enforcement officer with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I was fine with that. But what I wasn't fine with was him owning pews, because at that point in time I was really against them. But this was a part of our marriage that we fought about, that we had a lot of tension, because he was really into pews and I was really against pews. And I thought for sure that the fight would go my way, because I was just like, it's me or the pews. Like, you can't have them both. And then Y2K rolled around and he owned a couple at the time. I mean, he owns a lot more now since he's law enforcement, but at the time he wasn't law enforcement, and he had just gotten those recently. And I was so glad that he had them. So that was like a turning point for me. Of course, it turned out that Y2K was fine and we didn't need them, but I was so glad that we had them in case we needed them. I think a lot of people were feeling very scared and vulnerable. So, I feel pretty secure living with a person who's a very responsible pew owner, and who is in, not only is he law enforcement, he's a first responder for the rescue squad also. So it's nice to feel safe, but I just don't like the idea anyway. I mean, even if I was safe, I don't want other people to not be safe. And of course, there's no guarantees of your safety. I mean, sometimes being law enforcement literally puts a target on your back and people are going to go after you first. And I would think, like on J6, right? Terrible. Thank you so much for telling me that, Anna Bees, for Carmack's comment and reminding me to put it on live chat again. See, that's a huge flaw with YouTube, that it always reverts back to top chat. I had put it on live chat before I even came onto my live, and it reverted itself back to top chat. Screw that. I agree. Pew can be scary to have in your house. Yeah, they have to be kept in safes. And we have kids. So when the kids were small and he was getting into law enforcement, it really scared me. It really did. But everything was always locked. So I actually knew somebody when we first moved to Ohio whose nephew, the dad was in law enforcement, and he slept with a pew in between the mattresses, and he put it in the safe every day, and then he put it between the mattresses under where he slept at night. And one day he forgot to put it into the safe, and his wife was sitting there at the foot of the bed on the computer working, and their 2-year-old son got his hand on it, pulled it out, and ended his life accidentally. That was in like 2008, I think, because we moved back here in 2009. I'm pretty sure it happened right before. No, maybe it happened after we moved here. It was in a city called Vandalia. Let's see. I think it was in Vandalia. Let me see. It was awful. So awful. So here's another 2-year-old in critical condition just a couple years ago. Let's see if I can find when this happened. And then another one last year, February 22nd. Awful. Okay, here it is. Vandalia child. This was July 22nd, 2009. And yeah, we moved back here at the end of June in 2009. So it was a month later. William McCall found his father's handgun under the bed and pulled the trigger. His mother told a 911 dispatcher. Oh, so sad. So sad. And then, yeah, do the, oh, it says here that he was 3 years old. But then do the parents get charged with negligence? I mean, you're already dealing with that tragedy. And of course, they need to do an investigation to see if there was some gross negligence. I mean, people make mistakes, people have accidents. That's why they're called accidents. And I can't imagine anything worse than having made a mistake that turned to be fatal for your child. Annie Ruler, hello. And as long as, this is why I encourage people to try to walk the straight and narrow and do everything right and be sober when you are around your children. Because if you're being irresponsible, if you're partying, if you're drinking, if you're smoking, and something happens, you'll never be able to forgive yourself. But if you were doing everything right and something happens, it's still going to be hard to forgive yourself, but hopefully you'll be able to at some point in time. Yeah, it's really important to take that seriously. My last narc ex would bring out his shotgun for our bigger arguments. Oh my goodness, Annie Ruler and Anna Bees. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's crazy. I guess in case 5'3" me attacked him, 6'5", 300-pound him. And you're being 5'3" and him being 6'5" reminds me of a case that we haven't talked about in a while that's probably going to trial soon. Should check in on that cute little tiny girl in Boston with the Canton police officer, Matthew Farwell. And what's the victim's name that he set it up to make it look like she killed herself at the beginning of a snowstorm? Matthew Farwell was the cop who was, I want to say he's 6'4", and then she was like 4'10" or something. Matthew Farwell. And I guess Karen Reed's case is going to be going back to Sandra Birchmore is the victim's name. Let's see. She was 23 at the time. I'm sure you guys all remember we were talking about her not that long ago. So he was 15 years older than her, or no, he's 38 now, and she would be like 26. So he was like 12 years older than her. But I wonder when we're going to see that case go to trial, when it's scheduled for. The Boston Globe, the most recent article is December 18th, last month. And I'll read that later. Maybe I'll put that link into the description of the video. Chandra Levy. Yeah, Sandra Birchmore. Chandra Levy is another good one to discuss, though, because it was just yesterday that I was talking about, or the day before yesterday that I was talking about when Bush, in my opinion, stole the 2000 election, and then 9 months later there was the terrorist attack, the 9/11. And the thing where that comes into play is that the 9/11 terrorist attack completely distracted everybody from Chandra Levy's missing persons case. I don't think that her remains had been discovered yet, but Gary Condit was under extreme investigation. When was the date that her remains were found? I still think that he had everything to do with it. Chandra Levy, And, it was almost like he couldn't have asked for a better tragedy to happen to take the attention away. Um, the remains discovered. And so sad for her family. Her father, I think, is a physician, and her mother has spent her life now for victims advocacy. So her remains were not discovered for another 6 months. So yeah, I don't believe that they were there the whole time. It says a man walking his dog looking for turtles found Chandra Levy's skeletal remains in Rock Creek Park. So I know Rock Creek Park well. I kind of grew up there, and I was just there a couple of years ago. It's beautiful. It's kind of like Central Park, but better. It's in DC. It's so pretty, but it's a good place to pretend that somebody was there the whole time when they weren't, because it's a highly traveled park. Lots of people walking their dogs, lots of people walking, hiking, jogging. I don't think it would have taken that long. Um, so let's see. Discovered on May 22nd. And on that same day, the Levies appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show remotely from California. That afternoon, they found Chandra in the park. Bob Levy said, and I'm curious what type of doctor he is or was. Authorities told the Levies that their daughter's body was discovered in a remote area of DC's Rock Creek Park. Well, of course, they'd have to pretend that it was in a remote area. And again, how many people did they have searching? And, they would have had cadaver dogs out there searching. So, no, that's crap. It was planted there. Saying he found a skull. And then there was that immigrant who was charged with it, but I think he was paid off to take the heat. Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, I haven't talked about her case in a long time, but it's just really sad. These young women, and Chandra was pretty petite too. She was probably shorter than 5'3", Annie. Um, one of the things that Gavin DeBecker, I think, talks about in his book, The Gift of Fear, is that women that are 5'1" and under are like 95% of serial killers' victims. And for anybody who is 5'1" and under, they usually are well aware of that fact. And if anybody who's not aware of it needs to be. And I'm sorry that that's a thing for people that are shorter. I mean, of course, women that are taller can get assaulted too, but weasels don't want to be challenged. They want to dominate and control. It's all about power and control. They do not want to be humiliated. Another thing from The Gift of Fear that was a really good takeaway, and you guys have heard me say this more than once, is that every man's biggest fear is being made a fool of by a woman in particular, like a woman that he's romantically involved with. And every woman's biggest fear is being unalived by a man that she's involved with, or a stranger. I've been listening to that comedian Josh Johnson a lot lately. He's freaking brilliant. But he made this great commentary about how there was a thing on social media, like, would you rather be like left in the woods alone with a wild bear, or a stranger of a man that you didn't know? And people were just shocked at how many women said wild bear. And Josh's joke about it was, well, at least if you were attacked by a wild bear and you told people about it, they'd believe you. And, that's what makes a comedian so funny, is when their joke is so chilling like that. Because, yeah, how many people, especially tall women that have been violated, and then they're not believed. Well, you're 6 feet tall. How could a guy that's not 6 feet tall, that's shorter than you, um, overpower you like that. And it's like, well, it's not just physical strength. There's also psychological and, fear. I mean, a lot of people freeze up. There's the fight or flight or freeze. That frozen shock phase. Dylan was tall. Dylan was probably 5'10", and she was in frozen shock phase for days. They had to get out the heaters to melt her, right? Let's see. Sorry for the delay. I watch on TV and have to grab my phone to chat. I know. Well, and see, I like to respond on my laptop so that I can tag people. If I'm responding, if I'm in a chat on my phone, I can't tag anybody, and it's really annoying. I need a better phone. But at least I can see the chat, because I used to have a phone that I didn't even know what chat was. I'm like, what are people talking about? What is that? Because I didn't have a laptop either. In this day and age, we almost all have one, I think is what Anna B's tried to say. Yeah. I mean, my fear with them is not just children misusing them, but also the criminals taking it and using it against you. So, I never dated a drinker when my kids were young. Too many girls told me about alcoholic breath, daddy, and such touching. Ew, disgusting. Yeah, I just saw an article today about a 48-year-old woman who finally got justice against both her mother and her father. Her father had violated her whole life, and he was in the military, and he got demoted like 2 ranks by the army, which I thought was pretty darn good. I mean, it should be more. Like, what about jail time? She wasn't vindictive. She just wanted the truth. So she was happy with that. He did serve a little bit of jail time, but then he got like a 20-year deferred sentence. But, the whole thing with the gaslighting and the mind effery, and I mean, people really play games like that. It's not just a physical thing. The emotional part is huge, huge. Didn't that scumbag get out? The um the immigrant, I do think he got out, but I don't think he did it. I really don't. I think, unless he was hired by the politician's people. But the politician, he had a brother who was serving hard time for violent crimes. So, you guys know the CEOs and the criminally insane are very, very similar as far as their sociopathic behavior. Very, very similar. So I think the same is true for politicians and convicts. I'm thinking of another case. Sorry. My guy now is far from perfect. 9 years and only raised voices. Opposing politics is difficult, but zip the lip and travel. Yeah. Yeah. So he's more on the Democratic side, Annie, because aren't you more on the Republican side? And yeah, it shouldn't be such a huge problem, I don't think, in any relationship or friendship or family. But unfortunately, it is these days, like it's never been before. It's been like that for probably about the last 8 years, where people have cut people out of their lives because of opposing political views, or gotten into big fights at family holidays, or canceled family holidays. I mean, it's just nuts, isn't it? um so true. Hey, Fred Field, I was just getting ready to sign off here. We've been on for almost an hour and a half, and I don't want to sign off now that you're here, but let me look at my notes and see if there's anything that really needs to be added to this live before I do sign it off. And if there's anything you guys want to talk about, let me know. Like, was that yesterday? C3PO came in and said, "Can we talk about Beyonce's fake pregnant belly in that interview?" And I was so glad that she did that, because it had nothing to do with what we were talking about, but what a great talking point. And yeah, that flattened pregnant belly. Did you guys look at that? Have you looked at that Not My Cup of Tea video that I linked again in yesterday's live, in the description of yesterday's live? It's just like a 3-minute video. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend it. The case I was thinking of was the frat boy who red-roomed a girl somewhere in New York, and he was thinking he would get off, but they found him guilty. Yeah, wasn't that called like the Preppy murder or something like that? And they were like in a club, and then he assaulted her in Central Park, right across the street from the club. Is that the one, Annabes? I've decided not to move to Greenland or Canada, LOL. Well, I do think it's really funny, Fred, that, a lot of people, including myself, before the election were saying, if it goes a certain way, I might just have to move to Canada. And then, Tenacious D is talking about adopting Canada as if Canada wants to be adopted. It was just today that, we know that yesterday, was it, that Justin, I'm going to say his name wrong, Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, announced his resignation. And then today, a woman that I don't know what her office is, I'll try to find the information and put it in the description, but she had a really good comeback to that whole idea of the countries merging. She's like, yeah, we're not a state and we're not merging with anybody. Thank you, no thank you. Like, she was really mad and insulted. And, for anybody to act like they can just like strong arm like that, it's the Canadian MP Smackdown. Let me see what this is. It was on Midas Touch. Stop with that. I've got to fast forward through this weird little ad. I don't even know her name. Come on. Give me a name. Give me a name. Canadian Green Party member of the House Commons, Elizabeth May, crushed Tenacious D in the best speech yet. So yeah, I think it was just today. I'll put a link to that in the description. But the video is just from a couple hours ago. But I think that her speech was just from today also. She really makes a compelling speech. So yeah, the Gulf of America, like, what? It's like he's trying to start wars. He's just being such a crazy bully. And is his dementia getting that bad? Is he just so freaking attention starved and attention seeking? The drama is like, what is he trying to distract from other than everything, right? What a freaking poop fest. So yeah, it's absolutely absurd. And he's so vulgar, with all of his stuff about like Arnie Palmer's package and given oral sexual favors to a freaking mic during his alleged campaign speech. Oh, the whole thing with Harvey Weinstein getting schlonged. I mean, he's so freaking vulgar and he's so freaking absurd. It's insane. The combination of the vulgar and the absurd, and that, in my opinion, that he's even a candidate to be president and that he's standing as the president-elect right now is just terrifying unless you're a comedian and you basically don't need to write any material for the next 4 years. It's all going to be written for you, right? That's how I see it. Let's see. So, yeah, the tourist destinations: New Orleans, Vegas, Hawaii, the Mandalay Hotel in Vegas, or the Mandalay Casino. I think it was a hotel. And then the Mandeville Street address that Matthew Livelsberger lived at, his last known address. So yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, I was talking about the Karen Silkwood case and the crash expert, A.O. Pipkin, who had also consulted in Lady Diana's car accident. And he was more invested in Karen Silkwood's case than any other case of his entire career when he passed away. And then there was an Oklahoma, I think a city police officer, but some law enforcement whose last name is Dellinger, Dellinger. Oh, a state trooper who was like one of the only ones, it seemed, that was not okay with all the corruption around this car accident. That basically it wasn't really possible for Karen Silkwood to fall asleep in the 7 miles from the diner to where she crashed. But then Pipkin saved her bumper, probably because it had dents on it from the car that ran her off the road. And then he asked his daughter, Karen Pipkin Guerrero, to save it until there could, until forensic science could catch up enough to actually use it as a great piece of evidence. So wild. So very wild. So yeah, I think we're going to see more of the Karen Silkwood case because it's still considered a single vehicle car accident, and that's just not possible. But even though all 4 of the police officers that were in the car that allegedly ran her off the road, all 4 of them are deceased now, the company that she worked for would have to pay her son a heck of a lot of money if it becomes apparent that they were behind anything, right? So yeah, November 13th, I think it was 1973. It might have been 1974. I think it was 73. What else? Just to reiterate, Kyle and Brett Payne and Brent Kopacka, and both of these guys, Matt Livelsberger and Mr. Jabbar, were all in the 82nd Brigade. No, actually, Kyle was not the 82nd Brigade in Fort Bragg in North Carolina. The other 4 all were in the 82nd 4th Brigade. What did I call it earlier? The 82nd Airborne Division, 4th Brigade. Although it says here in my notes that Mr. Jabbar was in the 1st Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division. And that was from June of 2011 until January of 2015. So Matthew Livelsberger, his dates there overlapped with Mr. Jabbar's. And, we keep getting mixed messages from the authorities like, oh, well, they were both stationed there, but they didn't overlap. They were both deployed in Afghanistan, but they didn't overlap. They did overlap in Afghanistan. Livelsberger was deployed to Afghanistan 5 times from 2008 to 2019. And Mr. Jabbar was deployed 1 time to Afghanistan in February of 2009 to January 2010, which means that from May of 09 until December of 09, they were both serving maybe with the 82nd Airborne Division. But anyway, they were both serving during that 7-month period in Afghanistan. They were both deployed at the same time. I think it's important. I think it's important to pay attention to this stuff. And, I just want to say if I'm wrong about Sean Ryan, I'll be the first to come to YouTube and apologize. But I have no respect for this man. He made a video about Kamala, some bogus crap about the Hurricane Helene and some really accusatory things that he said in one of his videos, or more than one. I don't know. I just saw his apology video, which he was like, oh, I feel just awful. I said some inaccurate things, and let me clean that up. And everybody knows that if you've got a huge following, like if you're like a publication, like a newspaper, nobody pays attention to your corrections. I mean, hopefully on my tiny channel, people do. And, hopefully people are fact checking me so they know if I'm incorrect. But he doesn't seem very sincere the way he apologized about his inaccurate information. And I'm thinking that all this crap right now with Matthew Livelsberger is also inaccurate information. And I think this Sarah Adams with her CIA stuff, her prediction was that 2025 is going to be a nightmare of terrorist attacks and artificial intelligence. Like, let's make that not be true. We can't just accept that. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. You got to fight for your rights and don't give up, right? I just, I wish that this was a free and fair election that we just had in November, but I don't believe that it was. I don't believe that the social media, the Starlinks, the bomb threats, I believe that all of that is counter to a free and fair election. Absolutely. So, all right. What else, you guys? The stratospheric aerosol injection. Let's hope that nothing like that is coming our way. Let's hope that there's not going to be more like germ warfare. It's hard to think that the coronavirus wasn't some type of germ warfare, right? The China virus. Did I miss you solving Kylie's case while I was at the doctor? You're so cute, Fred. And how did your doctor's appointment go? Let's see. I have decided not to move to Greenland or Canada. And yeah, Iceland would probably be the best one to move to because it's the greenest of the three. I mean, Canada's beautiful, but it's cold. It's cold enough in parts of our North America that even get close to Canada. Nova Scotia might not be as cold because it's on the coast. I don't know, like being right on the shore can sometimes make it less cold, I guess, but also I guess just different days of the year can make it more cold also. Like Boston. That's a cold city. That's a really cold city. Chicago. I mean, it's on Lake Michigan. That's so huge. It seems like it's an ocean. Oh, and then all that offshore drilling that Biden put the kibosh on that Tenacious D is so upset about. He's just like, the whole ocean? That's big. He can't do that to that big of an area. That's like an entire ocean. And it's really wet in terms of wetness. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. I mean, the man is just not a genius, and he likes to say that he is. And it's just like, if you were smart, you'd keep a sock in it, right? You wouldn't be truth socialing all the time, posting at 4 a.m. The case, I already read that one. I can't believe he's resigning. That's so sad. Yeah, I haven't learned that much about it yet. I don't really know if it's because he wants to get away from that mess or what. I can't believe that half of the U.S. thinks he's the second coming of Christ. Annabise, good point. It's gross and sacrilegious. It's really bizarre. Yeah, there's like some books that were written a long time ago talking about like Baron Trump being the savior. Oh my goodness. Starkey Farmstead, who was a lunatic, in my opinion. I thought she was decent at first. But remember, she went to Maui to find the missing kids. And then she was like, everybody needs to back the F off. There are no missing kids. Just shut the F up and don't ask anybody anything. And then, she's the one that I learned about that whole Baron Trump book thing from. And I don't believe anything. I just don't. Like, you got to be really skeptical of this crap. And yeah, as if he's going to eliminate trafficking, as if he's going to eliminate the cars that tell, as if he's going to eliminate bad things. I mean, I wish we can't forget that. Is it Virginia Dupre? Is that her name? The one that was kind of collected up by Epstein's chick. What's her name? The madame with the short brown hair. Virginia Dufresne, she worked at the Trump Tower when Jeffrey Epstein's procurer recruited her to be abused by Epstein and Princess Andrew and more. And there's photographs to prove that she's not lying. But she was recruited from Mar-a-Lago. She worked at Mar-a-Lago. She was like a staff person. I think she worked at the front desk there. What is that evil madame's name? I hate her. Epstein's right hand, Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell. Thank you, Annabise. See, this is why I need you guys. Absolutely. We just had 4 years of awesome comedy to the other countries, but U.S. media hid all their reactions. We were the laughing stock. There were a lot of comedians that poked fun at Biden and Kamala in our own country. I mean, you got to be able to take a joke. Man, Biden with his debate, if you can call it that, with Trump before he dropped out of this last election. I mean, that was sad, and it's hard for me to watch people make fun of him, but it is kind of funny. Jack Johnson did some good routine on that. I'll put a link to it in the description. And I mean, it's kind of cringeworthy because it's like, the man is old, he's elderly, he has dementia. Like, it's just a little sensitive. But I think the same thing with Trump. Like, he's old, he's got dementia. And, I feel bad making fun of him because of those things. I think that a lot of other countries think that America is insane to have elected him a second time, Annie Ruler. That's my opinion. I think that there's a lot of people on YouTube that say positive things about him because they're getting paid off. I have heard that YouTube channels can get paid up to $100,000 per episode to say gloating things about him. I don't know. Could be fiction, but I I believe that there's a lot of people on YouTube that talk him up for reasons other than their true feelings. I was scared to be honest about my thoughts and feelings about it on YouTube because it seemed like everybody on YouTube was a Trumper. I was just like, what gives, man? What the F? But, um, I've seen a lot of people in my real life that were of that persuasion that are not anymore, that they came off of that over the last 4 years, if not over the last 8 years. But I don't know if any of the people that I knew that voted that way in the 2016 election, I don't know if any of them voted that way in the 2024 election, which is why I think that it had to be tampered with, because I think he lost a lot of his support base. I don't think he gained any support base at all. I mean, the whole thing with the insurrection is disgusting. It's despicable. What they did to Brian Sicknick and 150 other officers just like him, it's out of control. I mean, no, it's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And I will go ahead and start winding down now. So, yeah, did I miss you solving Kylie's case while I was at the doctor? I love that comment, Fred. Um, all solved. I did talk about it some, of course. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. You guys have got to look at my thumbnail for my video for yesterday, because I put all 4 of the photographs of her that are all photoshopped. Um, those spooky ones where she's in the black dress with the red sash. All 4 of them, I think, are across the top. And then all 3 of the creepy ones from after she went missing are on the bottom, like the sleepy, and then the one that we call Weekend at Bernie's. And then I put this, sorry, it's the 3rd time I've hit that mic. Then I put this little picture that I put the white letters on that said is something to the effect of, why won't anyone tell the truth for Kylie? But I put all 8 of those photographs together on the thumbnail, and I've made thumbnails with the photoshopped pictures that are so spooky, and I've made thumbnails with the spooky pictures that were released when she went missing, but I don't think I've ever merged them. So I was really proud of myself for coming up with that idea. So check out that thumbnail from yesterday's. Yes, when Sarah says that, likely sources, so get it stopped. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Annie Ruler, if you want to fill me in. Sorry, I'm like way behind, like 10 minutes. I'll get caught up and then sign off. Severe sodium restriction, compressing socks, MP in labs more often. It will make my life dreary and a pain. I try to restrict my sodium. That's a tough one because I love Frito honey barbecue twists like nobody's business. I like Doritos a lot too, but yeah, sodium's a tough one. Compression socks are probably good for everybody. I don't think that would make your life dreary. I don't know what the MP is. Labs more often. Yeah, it's good to keep a close eye on your labs. And hopefully it won't make your life dreary. Hopefully it'll improve your life, Fred. If you reduce your sodium intake, hopefully you'll be feeling better. So, yeah, it's good that you went to the doctor. It's good that you found those things out. You definitely want to follow their recommendations, right? I think they do also. Anna B says, I got into true crime to put energy elsewhere, better for my relationship and health. My economy was better 4 years ago. Time to brush up, it seems. Oh man, the whole price of eggs and price of food crap. I'm going to bring down the price of food. Oh, actually, I can't. It's really hard. Come on. It's like not funny. It's really not funny. Absolutely unacceptable. Annabee says, I hope you feel better soon, Fred. I will look. I have never added salt. Blood pressure, not MP. Okay, yeah. I was so confused by that. Checking your blood pressure more. And yeah, like trying not to get upset. When we get upset, our blood pressure shoots through the roof. And I think exercise like walking, and I don't know if you can jog lightly, but that type of exercise like cardio is really good for bringing your blood pressure down. Not trying to sell my yoga routine because I don't make any money off of that, but I keep doing it for my own health, and I'm trying to push it on people that want it because I think it'll help other people, and I love helping other people. So Fred, if you are up for it, I would say get a yoga mat and a couple of yoga blocks and give it a shot. Ideal is to have a bolster and maybe a small pillow or two and a canvas strap as well. But you don't need any of those things. You don't even need a yoga mat. You can just like spread out a blanket or a towel and do your yoga. I mean, you could do it on the floor too, but it's more comfortable and cleaner if you spread something out. But good for you that you've never added salt. And yeah. So Annie Ruler, I hope that things get better with our country and with the economy. I do. I don't want things to be bad, but I'm afraid that they're going to be. I'm afraid that there's going to be a lot more of that J6 type of violence. I mean, for crying out loud, making a song about it and celebrating it as a day of love, that's like celebrating white parties as a day of love. Seriously. Oh, Annabees, you're so sweet. And Fred Field says, I get plenty of exercise at work, lots of heavy lifting. And that's great. And yeah, if that's all you want to do, I am down with that. It's different though. Like going for a walk is different than the type of exercise that you get when you're lifting boxes and stuff. And part of it is just being in that mind frame of like meditating. So, meditating is probably the healthiest thing any of us can do for our health. And that's why I like to walk and do yoga, is because that's when I meditate. Actually, my best meditation is swimming. Oh man, when I'm in the water, I'm literally meditating the entire time. I love it. That's the one thing with swimming that's so good. Your yoga is so good. Anna Bees, I'm so glad you like it. Doubt this administration will be sending cash to Ukraine and not asking for receipts. Oh, I'm pretty sure I saw something just like in the last 12 hours about that, Annie. Let me see. I think I wrote it down. They're sending a huge pile of cash to Ukraine, I think. I don't see it. I could have sworn that it was him doing it, which I was just like, man, he's always criticizing everybody else for doing that. But yeah, I mean, it's important. World peace is important. I mean, I don't know. I think it's complicated, right? I mean, my granddad could have educated us all about it, but yeah, it's very complicated. Where did I see that thing about Ukraine? Dang it. I'll just have to find it later. Okay. Can I make one more point about the University of Idaho before we wrap up, which is in yesterday's video talking about the sheath and the single source DNA in the hole of the snap on the sheath. It's like the sheath was planted by who we don't know, but if all of the DNA was removed from the sheath, that's very intentional. So it wouldn't make any sense to me that Brian Koberger planted that sheath. But I don't trust that sheath at all. I don't trust Tolson being in charge of that evidence. The Idaho State Trooper Tolson, who was in charge of it. I don't trust that it was 4 hours into the investigation before the lead got there and before anybody noticed it. Like, they said that nobody else noticed it except the lead and Blaker. Come on, that's cray cray. I'm so sick of criminals criming. Love you all. Hey, hey, hey. Billy, darling, thanks for coming in. And we must help our NATO allies or we will be next to fall. Yeah, we've got to protect everybody. I mean, if we don't protect the people who are here legally, the immigrants, then yeah, we will all be the next to fall for sure. I mean, sounds like you need a different playlist. I don't ever hear what you speak. Can't change it. So puzzle. It's funny because the algorithm of YouTube actually tries to feed us like the opposite of what it is that we are looking for. So the things that we search and the things that we watch, sometimes the algorithm gives us more of that, but a lot of the algorithm is trying to give you the opposite of that. So yeah, I mean, I try to watch a good cross section of mainstream media.